Hi and welcome to Life Plus. My name is Luke Taylor and I'm the minister of New Life Church Teesside, and it's absolutely wonderful to be with you to share this time together. We've called these times Life Plus because, well, that's exactly what they're all about. Exploring the meaning of life, the place that God has in our lives, who we are as people, and what God has done for us. But also Jesus promised those who follow him would have life abundantly, life eternally, life plus. I hope tonight will encourage you and challenge you and help you see more clearly who Jesus is and what Jesus has done. If you have any questions or things you'd like to discuss, if you're watching this with a home host, I know they will be absolutely delighted to help you with that. If not, please feel free to get in touch with us. Today we are joined once again by Agust Olafsson, and this week he'll be sharing on how we can make an ideal working society. But first, let's start with some music.
Can only imagine what it would be like when I walk by your side. Can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. Can only imagine. Can only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine. And all I will do is forever, Lord, forever worship you. Can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine.
Yes.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
how do we build a great society? How do we build a healthy, thriving, virtuous society? I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a lot of stuff going on in the world today. We have wars, we have some strife within society, protests, vandalism. And when I look at all of that, I ask, what is a vision for a healthy society? How can we move towards a better future? What are some fundamental things for that? And what is my part to that? Because obviously, if we want to build a healthy society, what is my own role in that? Where does that fit, and where does that come into play? So look at that triangle that is on the screen. You will see at the top the word freedom. And this triangle and these three words, freedom, religion, and virtue, is really the best model that I've seen for a healthy, thriving society. Freedom means various things related all in the word freedom. You can go into your constitution and you will find something about freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom to travel, freedom to do commerce, etc. And most people agree that those are good things and foundational to build a healthy society. In the past, people have tried to build nations and control what people think or limit people's ability to go from place to place. And I think none of us like that. We like to have freedom to express ourselves and move to one place to another, etc. This is foundational. The next thing on that triangle is religion, or it can also be a set of ideas on how we understand the world around us. Those are the big foundational things that we use to understand, yes, the world around us and what it is to be a human and our relationship to the world. These are the ideas that we use to answer, for example, where do I come from, who am I, and where am I going? Those are big questions, and we answer them based on the underlying ideas that we believe or think are true. And it's important to note about this set of ideas, or how we understand the world. This has also been called the worldview. It's interesting to note that every single person has these ideas. They may have never talked about them or thought about them, or even put that into any kind of words, but it's obvious that everyone has these ideas, and they are sitting there in our life, often under the surface, and they greatly influence how we live our life. One of these core things is, for example, is there a God or not? I don't know your answer to that, but it has been shown that what we think or what we believe about that question influences how we live our life. And the same goes for other fundamental things. The next thing that you see on that triangle is the word virtue. Virtue is an interesting word. We don't use it that much today, it seems. Virtue means to do what is right when wrong is easier. That is virtue. Or to do what is right when nobody's looking. When you're alone, nobody is holding you accountable, but you still do what is right because there's an inner motivation. Something inside of you drives you. You actually, in your own being, you want to do what is right, what is moral, what is good. If that is the case, you have virtue. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So if you look at the triangle again, here is where it becomes very, very interesting, because there is a relationship, kind of interdependent relationship between all these three things. Let me give you an example. Let's say that virtue in a given nation is going down, okay? People are stealing more, they are saying, awful things to one another, they try to cheat, etc. So virtue is going down, and people in that nation, they sense that something is going downhill, virtue is going down, morals are sliding down. Now, if that is happening, the government may need to hire more policemen to protect the citizens against one another, and even put down more strict rules and regulations to clarify that you shouldn't cheat, you shouldn't steal, etc. So as virtue is going down, your freedom is even restricted, because the government is trying to protect people against the other citizens. So what I'm trying to say is that there seems to be a necessity to have good freedom. You need to have virtue. Virtue upholds freedom. And that is very interesting. But there's also a relationship between freedom and religion. I'm a Christian, for example, but it doesn't work if I go around with my Bible and I bang people in the head and try to press them in an unhealthy way to become a Christian. This doesn't work. It's wrong, and it's actually also opposite to the core principles of Christianity. So I don't do that. I will have conversations with people, and I will try my best to convince them that there is a God, because I'm utterly convinced that is the case. But I sometimes explain to people, actually, I will try to convince you that there is a God, but there's a line between us that I must not cross. And that is, I have to uphold and respect that you have a God-given authority and freedom to decide for yourself. And I respect that. So I give you the evidence, I give you the facts, I give you whatever I have, but I respect the fact that you then need to decide for yourself. So freedom, you can say, is a necessity for a healthy religion or a set of ideas. It's really hard or impossible to build a healthy worldview, a healthy set of ideas, if you are forced with violence or forced in some way to think a certain way. You have to be free to explore the evidence, to explore the data, and then make your own decision. I hope that makes sense, and it makes a lot of sense in my mind at least. So there's a relationship between freedom and religion, but there's also a relationship between religion and virtue. And I find this fascinating. One of the main roles of religion or a given set of ideas in this model is to build virtue. If the system of ideas or religion is doing its job, and if it's true, it will build virtue in society. And it's interesting, because if you look at a given nation or a given city even, and if you see that virtue is going down, you can ask a question and say, why is that happening? Why are people more and more mean to one another? Why is there more stealing? What is going on? Why is virtue going down? And often you will find that it is because the underlying ideas that are dominating how people think they are bad ideas. The set of ideas or religion that is being used is off in some way. It's wrong. Or maybe sometimes there's just a void. There's really no healthy conversation going on what is true, what is really true about this world. And if there's a void, then anything goes and there's chaos. You can see that also. So if you think about going back to my original question, how do you build a healthy society? This is the best model I've seen. Freedom, religion or worldview, and virtue. And there's a relationship between these. Now, I'm an evangelist, which means that I have conversations with people about if there's a God or not. And I do my best to convince people that that is the case and that Jesus lived, walked this earth, and rose from the dead. And that has to do with what we believe about this world. So I enter the triangle, so to speak, at that corner where it says religion or worldviews or set of ideas. And I do my best to convince people, what is true, but I respect their freedom, as I said earlier. And as I said earlier, if you can change your mind and if you can see a nation move to a set of ideas that are true and work well, you can see a change for the good, because virtue will go up and then freedom will go up, and it becomes a positive cycle. And we actually have examples of this in history. You can Google and look at the first Great Awakening that took place in the US between 1720 and 1780. They were actually having some problems in around 1720 as they were moving further west. There really was the wild, wild west where people were killing one another. They were not attending to their marriages or children or family. They were not farming. They were drinking and killing one another. And there was a breakdown of society. Then preachers like George Whitefield came over and they started to share the gospel, and hundreds of thousands of people changed their ideas, right? They changed their religion. They became convinced that there is a God, and they turned to Jesus, frankly. And virtue went up. People started attending to their families, their marriage, attending to their farms, and it built society. And then actually later there was the second Great Awakening. It's fascinating that George Whitefield, when he was ending his work, experts estimate that 80% of people living in America at that time had heard him speak live. 80%. That is a huge number. It had a massive influence. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a way to build a healthy society. But it is useless for you and me to talk about that unless we start with our own life. You and me, we have to start with taking personal responsibility for the life that we are living, that I am living and you are living. Because, I shouldn't be pointing at others unless I've taken responsibility for my own life. That will never work. The good start, the good move starts right here in my own heart and in your own heart. So how do you enter into that, and where does that lie? Well, I want to challenge you really to think through what is true about this world. Is there a God or not? You, like I said earlier, you are free to believe what you want. But we are not free as for the consequences of what our beliefs bring. I can jump off a building and convince myself that I'm flying, but eventually I'm going to hit the street with the consequences. So it is very important that what we believe about this world is actually true. And I want to offer you the option that there is a God that is present. He's present right now. He's always right there. Pastor Paul wrote a letter to a gathering of people in Rome. He wrote that letter many, many years ago. It was around 50 or so, 20, 30 years after Jesus was nailed on that cross. And in that chapter, Paul says, God is really close. He's really close. He is just what you can say one word, one prayer, and communicate with him. And that is what I want to offer you, that you ask questions about the world we live in, and that you talk to this God. He is personally present for you and me, and he is accessible. You can say something like, God, I'm not sure that you exist, but I'd like to know. I want to know if you exist, so show me. That has been a first step for many. Or if you're further along the journey, and it's okay to be on a journey, we are all on a journey. But if you're further along, you can say, Jesus, I acknowledge you. I want to believe in you. Help me. Okay. And right there, you can see how you and I, turning to Jesus and talking to him, brings us to personal responsibility, because we are acknowledging that Jesus lived an utterly perfect life when he walked this earth. And when I compare my life to his, I don't measure up. But the gospel is the fact that I don't need to work myself up towards God. Jesus came into this world and he becomes one like us. And he shows us face to face at our level who God is. And if we are willing to accept him and turn to him, he says, I will live in your heart and I will take on me everything that you've done wrong, everything that has gone amiss in your life. And instead of me trying to work myself up to God on my own resources, Jesus comes to me and God sees me perfect as I take on the life of Jesus. And Jesus does that exchange and takes on himself my imperfect life. And then Jesus lives inside my heart and he changes my life day by day, week by week, year by year. That is accessible for you also today.